Richard T. Kazmaier. In West Texas A&M University, Richard Kazmaier was a highly regarded biologist and associate professor, known for his extensive research in herpetology and wildlife ecology. He earned his Ph.D. in zoology from Texas A&M University in 2000, focusing on the ecology of the Texas tortoise. Over 2 decades, he published widely, guided students, and contributed to wildlife conservation efforts across Texas. But beneath his academic reputation, federal investigators discovered something unbelievable. Between March 2013 and 2020, Kazmaier illegally bought, imported, and possessed hundreds of wildlife items, animal skulls, skeletons, and taxidermy mounts from countries around the world, including Bulgaria, China, Indonesia, Russia, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. Investigators later confirmed that 358 wildlife items, valued at over $14,000, had been smuggled into the United States without the required declarations or permits. Among them were specimens from protected species under the Lacey Act and the Endangered Species Act, such as Eurasian otters, lynxes, vervet monkeys, caracals, and kingbirds of paradise. In January 2022, a federal grand jury in the Northern District of Texas, Amarillo Division, indicted Kazmaier on multiple counts of wildlife trafficking and smuggling. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, he knowingly violated federal law by acquiring and transporting wildlife parts across international borders without declaring them to authorities. Facing overwhelming evidence, he pleaded guilty in August 2022 to a felony count of Lacey Act violations. In January 2023, a federal judge sentenced him to 6 months in prison, followed by 1 year of supervised release, and ordered him to pay a $5,000 fine. Shortly after his plea, Richard Kazmaier resigned from his position at West Texas A&M University in October 2022. Sami Al-Arian. He was born on January 14, 1958, in Kuwait to Palestinian refugee parents who had fled the aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. After immigrating to the United States, he earned his doctorate in computer engineering and later joined the University of South Florida in Tampa in 1986. There, he became a tenured associate professor and gained recognition for his work in computer science and for co-founding the World and Islam Studies enterprise, known as WISE. He also founded the Islamic Committee for Palestine, a group that publicly advocated for Palestinian rights and hosted international speakers. In the years following the September 11th attacks, Al-Arian came under increasing scrutiny for alleged links to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a group designated by the U.S. government as a terrorist organization. Federal prosecutors accused him of using his academic and non-profit positions to secretly assist the PIJ by facilitating communications and financial transactions. On February 20, 2003, he was arrested in Tampa after a grand jury indicted him and several others on 17 federal counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, and providing material support to a terrorist group. After a lengthy and highly publicized trial in 2005, a federal jury acquitted him on 8 counts and deadlocked on the remaining 9. In February 2006, Al-Arian entered into a plea agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice, admitting to 1 count of conspiring to provide services to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to drop the remaining charges and recommend his deportation after the completion of his sentence. On May 1, 2006, U.S. District Judge James S. Moody, Jr. sentenced Sami Al-Arian to 57 months in federal prison, granting credit for time already served since his 2003 arrest. He was also sentenced to 3 years of supervised release and was ordered to be deported upon completion of his prison term. Following his release, Al-Arian was transferred to immigration custody and later deported from the United States to Turkey on February 4, 2015. Bruce Michael Bagley. Bruce Bagley was once regarded as one of America's foremost experts on Latin American politics and corruption. As a professor and former chair of the University of Miami's Department of International Studies, he advised the U.S. State Department, the FBI, and the DEA on organized crime and drug trafficking. He authored and co-edited numerous works including drug trafficking, organized crime, and violence in the Americas today, and had built an academic career rooted in exposing the very criminal systems he would later be accused of enabling. In November 2019, the same man who studied corruption was arrested for living inside it. Federal prosecutors charged Bagley with laundering more than $2 million in funds derived from bribery and embezzlement schemes tied to Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA. According to court filings, between November 2017 and October 2018, he opened bank accounts in his name to receive large international wire transfers from overseas accounts located in Switzerland and the United Arab Emirates. Each month, roughly $200,000 would arrive, and he would then withdraw about 90% of those deposits in cashier's checks made out to a Colombian associate while transferring the remaining 10% into his own account. He later admitted that he knew the funds were proceeds of foreign corruption and embezzlement stolen from the Venezuelan people. On June 1, 2020, Bagley pleaded guilty to 2 counts of money laundering in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. During sentencing in November 2021, Judge Jed S. Rakoff remarked that if anyone understood the illegality of the conduct, it was Dr. Bagley himself. Citing his age and declining health, the court imposed a reduced sentence, giving him 6 months in federal prison, along with forfeiture of hundreds of thousands of dollars. After serving his term, Bagley quietly returned to private life, with no public record of further academic employment. James Patrick Lewis. James Patrick Lewis was once a respected tenured physics professor at West Virginia University, specializing in the study of molecular reactions used in co-conversion technology. His academic career spanned more than a decade, marked by research contributions and teaching in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. But in 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice revealed that behind his professional record lay a serious act of fraud tied to an international recruitment program. According to federal court documents, Lewis entered into a contract in July 2017 with the Chinese Academy of Sciences as part of the Chinese government's Global Experts 1,000 Talents Plan. Under that contract, he was to serve as a professor in China for at least 3 years, receiving about 1 million yuan, approximately $143,000 in living subsidies, 4 million yuan, about $573,000 in research funding, and a salary of roughly 600,000 yuan, about $86,000. Despite this foreign appointment, Lewis continued his position at West Virginia University. In March 2018, he submitted a request to West Virginia University for an alternate work assignment for the fall 2018 semester, claiming he needed time to care for a newborn child. The university granted his request, allowing him to receive his full salary during the leave. However, investigators later found that instead of caring for his child, Lewis had spent all but 3 weeks of that semester in China, fulfilling his obligations under the Chinese contract and the European. His newborn remained in the United States, and Lewis continued to collect his full West Virginia University pay, amounting to $20,189 in fraudulent salary payments. Federal prosecutors charged him with 1 count of federal program fraud, stating that his misrepresentation enabled him to receive money from the university while simultaneously working under a foreign government's program. On March 10, 2020, Lewis, then 54 and living in Fairview, West Virginia, pleaded guilty to the charge in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of West Virginia. On July 30, 2020, U.S. District Judge Thomas S. Clea sentenced James Patrick Lewis to 3 months in federal prison, ordered him to pay $9,363 to cover the cost of incarceration, and required restitution of $20,189 to West Virginia University, which he later paid in full. Lewis had already resigned from the university a year earlier in August 2019, and prosecutors confirmed that no further criminal conduct was reported after his release. Eric T. Poehlman. Eric Poehlman was once a highly respected scientist and professor at the University of Vermont's College of Medicine, widely regarded for his studies on human metabolism, obesity, and aging. Born in 1956, he built an impressive career, publishing more than 200 papers, securing millions in National Institutes of Health grants, and earning international recognition for his research on menopause and metabolic decline. To his peers, he was a pioneer uncovering how aging and hormones affect body composition, but behind the accolades, a decade-long deception was unfolding inside his laboratory. Between 1994 and 2000, Poehlman falsified and fabricated data in multiple National Institutes of Health grant applications and published studies. He altered figures on resting metabolic rate, body fat, energy expenditure, and hormone levels to make his findings appear more dramatic and scientifically significant. The misconduct came to light after a lab technician at the University of Vermont discovered suspicious inconsistencies in his data sets. Spreadsheets where he had reversed time points, invented numbers, and even fabricated data from subjects who never existed. Federal investigators later confirmed that he falsified results in at least 10 scientific papers and 17 National Institutes of Health grant applications, obtaining roughly $2.9 million in research funding through deceit. The Office of Research Integrity concluded that Poehlman's false data had influenced studies on menopause, hormone replacement therapy, and genetic variants linked to obesity. The revelation sent shockwaves through the academic community, exposing one of the most serious cases of scientific fraud in U.S. history. In June 2006, the U.S. District Court in Vermont sentenced Eric T. Poehlman to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison after he pleaded guilty to making false statements in an NIH grant application. It was the first time an American academic researcher had ever been sentenced to prison for data falsification. Following his release, Poehlman was permanently barred from receiving federal research funding and required to retract or correct numerous publications that contained falsified results. Theodore John Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski was born on May 22, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. A brilliant but socially withdrawn child, he entered Harvard University at just 16 years old, and later earned a Ph.D. in mathematics from the University of Michigan in 1967. That same year, he became an assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley, the youngest in the department's history. His academic career was short-lived, however. In 1969, Kaczynski abruptly resigned, rejecting modern life and technology. He moved to a remote cabin near Lincoln, Montana, where he lived without electricity or running water, spending years writing and crafting homemade explosives. Between 1978 and 1995, Kaczynski carried out a nationwide bombing campaign that targeted universities, airlines, and individuals associated with modern technology. The FBI nicknamed him the Unabomber, short for University and Airline Bomber. Over 17 years, he mailed or hand-delivered 16 bombs, killing 3 people and injuring 23 others. His devices were meticulously constructed from ordinary materials, leaving almost no traceable evidence. Despite the largest manhunt in FBI history, Kaczynski remained unidentified for nearly 2 decades. In 1995, he sent a 35,000-word essay titled "Industrial Society and Its Future" to the New York Times and the Washington Post, demanding they publish it to explain his anti-industrial ideology. The essay argued that technology and industrialization were destroying human freedom. When it was printed, Kaczynski's brother David recognized the writing style and contacted the FBI. Investigators traced the clues back to Ted Kaczynski's small Montana cabin, where they arrested him on April 3, 1996. Inside, agents discovered detailed journals, bomb-making materials, and a live device ready to mail. In January 1998, Ted Kaczynski pleaded guilty to all federal charges, including 3 counts of murder and 10 counts related to the mailing and use of explosives that killed Hugh Scruton, Thomas Mosser, and Gilbert Brent Murray, avoiding the death penalty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole and transferred to ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado, where he spent more than 2 decades in near-total isolation. During his imprisonment, he continued writing and exchanging letters, maintaining his intellectual pursuits. On June 10, 2023, Ted Kaczynski was found dead in his prison cell at the age of 81. The Bureau of Prisons later confirmed his death was a suicide. Stephen Ships. Stephen Ships was once a celebrated figure in the classical music world, a violinist, conductor, and longtime professor at the University of Michigan's School of Music, Theater, and Dance. For decades, he was known for nurturing young talent, directing the school's strings preparatory program, and representing the university at international festivals in Europe and North America. He had previously taught at the North Carolina School of the Arts, the University of Nebraska-Omaha, and at major summer programs abroad, building a reputation as a trusted mentor in elite music circles. But behind the prestige, investigators would later uncover a disturbing pattern of misconduct. In October 2020, a federal grand jury in Detroit indicted Ships, then 67 years old and living in Ann Arbor, on 2 counts of transporting a minor across state lines with the intent to engage in sexual activity. Prosecutors alleged that in 2002, Ships used his authority and influence as a teacher to groom and exploit a teenage girl, traveling with her between Michigan and other states for illicit purposes. In November 2021, Ships pleaded guilty to 1 federal count of transporting a minor for sex. Court records confirm that he admitted to taking the underage student across state lines in 2002, acknowledging that his actions were criminal and abusive. Decades of allegations from former students also came to light, describing an atmosphere of fear, manipulation, and sexual misconduct, stretching back through his career in multiple states. On April 14, 2022, U.S. District Judge Denise Page Hood sentenced Ships, who was 69 years old, to 5 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay $120,000 in restitution to his victim. The court noted that Ships had used his professional stature to exploit vulnerable students under his supervision. He had already retired from the University of Michigan in 2019 and has not been associated with any institution since his conviction. Jeffrey Girnun. Dr. Jeffrey Girnun was once a respected cancer researcher at Stony Brook University's Renaissance School of Medicine, a Ph.D. in cancer biology from the University of Iowa. Girnun had built a strong reputation studying how tumors metabolize nutrients and grow. As an associate professor of pathology and director of cancer metabolomics, he was awarded federal grants from the National Institutes of Health to advance cancer research. But behind his promising career, prosecutors later discovered a scheme that exposed everything. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, between 2013 and 2017, Jeffrey Girnun secretly formed 2 shell companies, Atlas Metabolomics LLC and Empyrean Biosciences LLC, which he falsely claimed were legitimate vendors supplying research equipment and services to his university lab. He submitted fraudulent invoices to Stony Brook, which were then paid using NIH and university grant funds. Investigators found that the money, totaling more than $200,000, was wired into the accounts of those fake companies and then transferred to Girnun's personal accounts to pay his home mortgage and his children's tuition. In September 2019, federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York unsealed a 7-count indictment charging him with theft of government funds and wire fraud. In January 2020, he pleaded guilty to stealing cancer research funds, admitting that he used his position and grant access to divert federal money for personal use. On October 6, 2020, U.S. District Judge Dennis R. Hurley sentenced him to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison, ordered him to forfeit $225,000, and to repay the same amount in restitution to the National Institutes of Health and Stony Brook University. Following his conviction, Jeffrey Girnun resigned from his faculty position, ending a career once dedicated to saving lives through cancer research. There have been no public records of his professional activities since his release, marking a quiet end to a career that began in promise. Simon Saw-Tung. He was a longtime professor of electrical engineering at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, known for his research in power electronics and energy conversion systems. He had spent more than 30 years at the university, led several NASA-funded projects, and was named an Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers Fellow in 2013 for his contributions to high-efficiency power conversion technologies. In May 2020, Ang's career unraveled when he was arrested by federal agents and charged with wire fraud and making false statements to the FBI. Prosecutors allege that he failed to disclose his connections to Chinese entities and participation in China's Thousand Talents Plan, a state-sponsored recruitment program that sought to attract scientific expertise from abroad. Investigators said Ang filed dozens of patents in China, using his Chinese name, but never revealed them to the university or federal authorities as required by conflict of interest rules. According to the Department of Justice, Ang later admitted that he had lied to FBI agents about being the inventor on those patents. As part of a plea agreement, all other counts were dismissed, and he pleaded guilty to a single charge of making a materially false and fictitious statement to federal investigators. On June 16, 2022, U.S. District Judge Timothy L. Brooks sentenced him to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison, followed by a year of supervised release. Following his conviction, Ang's name was removed from the University of Arkansas faculty directory, and he has not returned to teaching or research since his release. John Robert Muriello. John Muriello was once a respected personality at the University of Iowa's School of Music, known for his powerful baritone voice and decades of service as a voice and opera professor. He directed and performed in numerous university productions, taught aspiring vocalists, and was recognized as an emeritus faculty member following his retirement. But behind the curtain of his academic career, investigators would later uncover a disturbing, hidden life. According to federal court records and the U.S. Department of Justice, between 2020 and 2021, Muriello conspired with others, including an associate named Eric Jonathan Hochka, to obtain and distribute methamphetamine in the Iowa City area. Prosecutors said the drugs were supplied from California and that the conspiracy ultimately led to the overdose death of a victim in May 2021. During the investigation, authorities also discovered that Muriello had been hosting drug-fueled gatherings at his home, where he provided methamphetamine and other controlled substances to attendees and recorded sexual activity. When federal agents executed a search warrant on his Iowa City residence, they found methamphetamine and seized multiple electronic devices. A forensic examination revealed more than 12,000 images and thousands of videos of child pornography, many depicting the sexual exploitation of minors. The discoveries led to additional federal charges for possession of child pornography alongside the drug conspiracy case. In March 2023, Muriello pleaded guilty to 2 federal felonies: conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine resulting in death, and possession of child pornography. On July 21, 2023, he was sentenced in the Southern District of Iowa to 25 years in federal prison for the drug charge and 20 years for the child pornography offense, to be served concurrently. The court also ordered him to forfeit his residence, pay a $50,000 fine, $12,000 in restitution, and more than $22,000 in special assessments. Upon release, he will remain under federal supervision for 5 additional years. As of now, John Robert Muriello remains incarcerated in federal custody, marking a tragic downfall from celebrated professor to convicted felon. Knezevich. He wasn't just another faculty name on Eastern Kentucky University's staff list. He was a trusted educator in the School of Aviation. But behind that image, prosecutors say, 36-year-old Knezevich was hiding a secret that would unravel his entire career. Based on reports from the U.S. Department of Justice, Knezevich, who taught at Eastern Kentucky University in Richmond, secretly installed a hidden camera inside a men's restroom on campus. The device was discovered by a student on September 7, 2023, prompting university police to launch an immediate investigation. When agents searched Knezevich's home, they found multiple covert recording devices and digital files showing that he had been secretly filming men and boys for years, not just on campus, but also in locker rooms, showers, and even private residences. Federal prosecutors revealed that the videos dated back as far as 2009 and included both adult and minor males in various stages of undress or while using restrooms and showers. Knezevich admitted in court that his intent was to capture minor males engaged in sexually explicit conduct, a violation of federal child exploitation laws. In November 2023, he pleaded guilty in U.S. District Court in Lexington to attempted production of child pornography. Then, on April 16, 2024, U.S. District Judge Gregory Van Tatenhove sentenced him to 220 months in federal prison, more than 18 years, followed by a lifetime of supervised release. Under federal law, Kyle Knezevich must serve at least 85% of that sentence before becoming eligible for release. As of now, he remains incarcerated under that sentence. Eastern Kentucky University has not released additional details about his employment history or disciplinary record, beyond confirming his removal from the university following the federal charges. Michael Horning was indeed a respected communications professor at Virginia Tech, known for his research in digital media, transparency, and online journalism. He joined the university's School of Communication in 2014 after completing his doctorate and building a reputation for studying how technology shaped civic engagement and information sharing. For nearly a decade, he taught courses in multimedia journalism and visual communication, earning recognition among students and peers. But behind that academic success, investigators later uncovered a disturbing double life. According to federal prosecutors, between 2009 and 2021, Horning used peer-to-peer file-sharing platforms, including the Freenet network, to download and possess child sexual abuse material. When law enforcement executed a search warrant at his Christiansburg, Virginia residence in December 2021, they seized his electronic devices and discovered hundreds of illegal files. The forensic analysis revealed 663 images and 14 videos depicting minors engaged in sexually explicit conduct. Among these were 38 images and one video involving infants or toddlers, and another video showing sadomasochistic acts. In September 2024, Horning pleaded guilty to a single federal charge of possessing visual depictions of minors under the age of 12 engaged in sexual conduct. On January 10, 2025, the United States District Court for the Western District of Virginia sentenced him to 60 months in federal prison. If you enjoyed this and want to see more interesting videos, I'm going to be posting every day on this channel. I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Thank you very much.